Anyone who's ever done anything worth doing has dreamed big, failed mightily, and mostly started from humble beginnings. This is a podcast about such people. The most fascinating podcast in the world is fascinating because of the stories of the human beings. Hello, everybody. It's Pat DiCerbo, the most fascinating podcast in the world. Nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the people that agree to talk to me. And today we have one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. And I have the good fortune to have known him since first grade. We met in Galway Central Schools in Galway, New York, when we were both 6 years old. Today, John is in charge of global quality for Convatec, which is a UK headquartered public company in Europe. It's a FTSE 100 company, which I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I think it's like an S&P 500 or NASDAQ 100 or something like that in the US. And today we're going to start in the beginning and see where we end up. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Pat. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. So as you know, I'm in the habit of asking people about their earliest memories, and I figure you and I probably met sometime after your earliest memories, but I just wonder, back home in Galway, what you remember from early childhood.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I go back a little further than that because I was born in Manhattan, in New York City. My dad was from Brooklyn, my mom from Queens. So my earliest memories are actually those first 5 years down in the city, spending time with my grandfather. And really that was, walking through the neighborhood to the stores, go to the deli, go to the baker, talk to the neighbors along the way, straighten out their trash cans if the covers weren't on them, say hello to who was ever out on the stoop. So that's my earliest memories. And then it was at the age of 5 when my dad moved us upstate. And we landed in the smallest incorporated village in New York State, Galway. And that's where I started school, kindergarten. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I always wonder, is it still the smallest incorporated village?
I don't know, but I describe it as a one traffic light town
Mm-hmm.
with the 4 establishments on the corner and a really small school that people like you and I think we're fortunate to go to. For me, it was a great childhood.
Yeah, agreed. I have a lot of great memories.
Yeah. So it's
So,
quite a contrast. I mean, if you think about coming out of the city to Galway, and we lived on a road that was a mile long with I think 8 houses on it, so not a whole lot of neighbors and a lot of farms and things like that, but it was a lot of outdoor activities and things like that we kind of grew up with once we got upstate.
no doubt.
Yeah.
So, what do you remember early on about moving to Galway?
I remember being outside a lot. I remember,
Mm-hmm.
waiting for the bus outside with my siblings and my neighbors that lived across the street. We would come home from school and we'd play outside until we had to go in for dinner. We did a lot of sports. We competed with everything, racing here and climbing there, and anything to stay busy and active outside. And of course, a fair amount of time at school and playing sports and being part of teams and things like that. That was also a really big part of childhood for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when we had summer recreation at the
Yes.
school back then, did you go to that?
Yeah, I went to summer rec sometimes. I think we played a lot of flag football, capture the flag, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes in the summer I was also doing some work or time at some of the camps up in the Adirondacks, which were more Christian oriented.
Okay.
My parents were very religious as I was growing up. We
Mm-hmm.
went from the Catholic Church to Christian churches. And so, establishing my faith was a really big part of my childhood. Um, we went to church every weekend, sometimes in the middle of the week. And in the summertime, we spent some time at some of those camps and the other times in the summer at the rec program.
Got it.
Yeah.
Were you involved in organized sports when you were young? Like, did you play Little League or anything like that? I can't remember.
I didn't play Little League. I think the first sports I played is when we got to the modified level, probably middle
Mm-hmm.
school, sixth, seventh, eighth grade,
Mm-hmm.
and then running cross country,
Mm-hmm.
wrestling in the winter, running track in the spring. It was kind of the three sports that were that lent themselves to my abilities
Mm-hmm.
at the time. So I felt like I was either playing sports all the time or working at home outside in the garden and just doing some stuff around the house, but kind of splitting time between those until I got to high school. And then really, I mowed a couple lawns to make some money. So that was part of early jobs, I guess, to raise some income by taking care of some other folks' properties and still balancing the studies and the sports.
Mm-hmm. So at some
Probably,
point,
Pat, I mean, but I mean, cross country was great. I played a little bit of soccer as well in the high school years, but wrestling was probably the sport that was most grounding for me and the one that really probably set me on the course for my life, quite honestly, because I think it was the first sport where I made a decision to compete in a sport that I wasn't naturally good at. But I really wanted to be a part of that team. You were on that team. A lot of
mm-hmm.
the guys I hung out with were on that team, and I wanted to be on the team. And as you know, I lost a lot more matches than I won. But I was very proud just to be a part of the team and to lose as much weight as I had to lose to get to a
Yeah,
weight class where I could win a wrestle off and compete. So that was really pivotal for me being on
it
that team.
was huge
Yeah,
for me too. I mean,
yeah,
nothing. Dan Gable likes to say, "If you can wrestle, you can do anything,"
yeah,
and
yeah.
I I feel like it's true in my case, and definitely in your case. When I talk to people about you,
Hmm.
I often say he wasn't one of the better wrestlers on the team, but
Yeah,
he never quit, never gave up, was willing to lose a lot of weight. It wasn't
yeah.
like certain our senior year, I think we were undefeated, right? Our
I think it
junior or
was
senior.
senior year. Yeah, and we were wrestling against some pretty good schools at that time too. So the program had really come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And, and again, I was a part of it, which was great. But as you know, I think in soccer season, I was probably somewhere around 145 pounds or so.
Oh
And
man,
I had to get down to 112
that's
because I couldn't,
crazy.
I couldn't do 135 or 126, 119. So I just kept losing weight until I could get on the mat and represent the team.
Man,
Yeah.
that's big.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, if wrestling, you're going out there one person against one person, nobody else but the two of you on the mat. And, one person comes off the victor and the other one not. And for me, it was a lot of humility. I mean, I was humbled on that mat many a time. I had
Mm-hmm.
some wins as well, which were quite the events to celebrate since I
Sure.
wasn't getting as many of them. But it was just great to be on the team and to be able to compete at that level with you guys. It meant a lot to me. I know that.
Me too.
Yeah.
And may not be obvious to you because you're in it,
Yeah.
when you're in it, but you inspire other people. People watch you work out every day, and
Yeah.
they know you're not winning a lot of matches and you're cutting weight. I mean,
Yeah.
it's such a variety of sacrifices. Like in my case, and I didn't cut nearly as much weight as you, but I
Yeah.
often tell people there were two contests. It was me against me to see if I had the self discipline to lose the weight, and
Yeah.
then me against my opponent. Making weight was like a win.
Yeah, exactly. That was a huge, even that was a huge achievement just to be, and sometimes you had to wrestle off, right, to get to the spot to wrestle in the match that week. So, or
Right.
the tournament. So, and you're right, it really was. And so many other things in life are that way. Like, no matter what I was competing in over the years, it was really, I was competing with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And could I push that bar of excellence a little bit higher? And I think wrestling was really the epitome of that when you think about it. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. Just practice too. I mean, how many practices were you just like, I don't know if I can make it?
Yeah, practice was exhausting, and then you'd go home and wrap yourself in vinyls and sweat a
Right.
few pounds out
Oh
overnight
yeah.
and
Run
make
around
weight
Galway
the next.
Lake. It's only
Yeah,
10 miles in the dark.
yeah. Anything to make weight, right? Like we
Right.
would do anything to make weight and then
Hmm.
fuel up during the day a little bit and then be out on the mat for the match. So it was a big part of what we did. And to your point, you know, the workouts and how hard can you push yourself and then be there to support others on the team. There's just so much to be learned, I think, by participating in and competing in sports like that.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as far as I can recall, you were always the smartest person in our class, and you ended up being the valedictorian. And
Yes.
you decided at some point that you were going to go to West Point. Do you
Yeah.
remember where you got that idea when you decided to?
Yeah, I do. So I had no idea where I was going to go to college. I played all the sports, but I wasn't a good enough athlete to get a scholarship. We didn't have money as a family, so I didn't know what to do about going to college. I didn't want to get into all sorts of debt. And it was actually Mrs. Rice, who I'm sure you'll recall,
Hmm.
who, you know, brought the idea to me of, have you ever thought of the military academy? And I had not even heard of it. But she mentioned that you know, you need to have good grades, you need to be an athlete. It's very challenging, and as soon as I heard the word challenging and sports and academics, we checked it out. Um, and we went down to Albany, which was like going to the city for us country people. My parents took me down there. We went to a briefing about it. Maybe it lasted an hour, hour and a half, and we walked out. And my dad said, "Well, I guess that one's off the list." And I said, "Actually, I think I'm going to send an application in." Um,
What
because
was
they had
his perspective?
because they had some cadets there, and they had a captain from the Army, from the recruiting office, and they shared about the academic program, classes on Saturday, all of the discipline, the uniforms. Summertime, you had 2 weeks off. You did military training the rest of your summer. They just really made it clear the intensity of the program, which is very different than what most people are going to for college, right? Coming out of high school at 18 years old. But for me, I gravitated to that, like just the idea of something different and a challenge. And probably, to be fair, the idea of trying to achieve something, the idea of people thinking he's not going to make it there, and wanting to prove that yes, I can. And that really drove me through. I guess it still drives me today, right? Just to continue to prove that I can do it. I can take the bar higher, and that's why I ended up choosing West Point.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Most people go the other way, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, and I think my due diligence was I talked to my grandfathers, both of whom were in World War II and in the
mm,
military, and they had good experiences. They were not career military people, but their best friends were from their time in the service. The same for an uncle of mine. So my reference points weren't very many, but it just seemed like it would be a really good thing to do, and it kind of fit who I was.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So day one, West Point, do they call you a plebe at West Point?
Yeah, your first year, you're a plebe. You're a
Okay.
plebe. So you know, I graduated high school June 23rd. I think it was 7 days later that we started, like summer training. They put you through what they call beast barracks, and you figure they're bringing in all these kids like me who are, um, you know, varsity athletes, valedictorians, and been successful in high school, and they waste no time in breaking you down and making sure you understand that you do not rank at the place that you've arrived at. So they do a pretty good job over the summer of kind of humbling you and putting you through the basic training and learning the basics about the military and West Point and getting you ready before the academic year in the fall. Yeah.
What do you remember early on? Like, I remember you telling me a story about you had a newspaper route on
Yeah, we had
campus.
to, you had chores that you had to do. So as freshmen, it was very uncomfortable. I mean, you had a certain route you could take and a certain way you had to walk and greet everybody and know everybody's name. You were required to read the paper before you showed up at formation at 6:30 in the morning because you would be asked questions about the latest news and sports.
What
Delivering
paper
newspaper.
was it? Was it the campus paper or a different
It was
paper?
the New York Times. The New York
Okay.
Times was delivered to every single room. I'm not sure if it still is, but at West Point, we delivered the papers to the upperclassmen as plebes, as freshmen. And you had to study up before the first part of the day and at least know what was going on in the world and what the sports highlights were. And if you were smart, you knew who was going to ask questions about which teams and which parts of the country. So you kind of knew where to focus your reading.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do remember you saying, like, there's not enough time in the day to get everything done. Like,
Yeah.
I struggle to, get up, get dressed, read the paper, deliver the papers, and then
Yeah.
to be in formation and eat and
Eat and then have your room ready for inspection, because every day, the bed had to be made, sink dried out, like everything was available to be inspected pretty much any time. So everything was in its place all the time. And yeah, you had classes all day. Then you had mandatory athletics. So if you didn't play on an intercollegiate team, you played intramural sports. But everybody played sports pretty much every day. So you had academics, then you had your sports, then you had dinner, and only then would you find time to study and get ready for the next day. So the days were pretty long, pretty intense. Yeah.
um how did you develop like a strategy to cope? I mean, what's the fallout rate at West Point, that, or the attrition rate, I should say?
Yeah, at the time it was about 33%. So I
Okay.
recall being in Mikey Stadium the first day, our day, and they pretty much say, look to your left, look to your right. One of those people will not be here when you're graduating 4 years from now. And that was, I think we started with 1,400 and change, and we graduated just under 1,000. So we were probably about the same as that 33%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever consider quitting?
You know, that you mentioned it before, but that idea of never, never quit. And I've got a rock that sits on my desk here that just says never, never quit. It's the simplest thing, but quitting was not an option for me. So I could get beaten down pretty good, just like in the wrestling days of the past, and just keep coming back. The only time I actually thought about, is this the right place for me? After 2 years, you do your summer training. And when you go to your first class as a junior in your third year, that's when you begin to have an obligation to serve. So that's a real big decision point. And for me, I did spend some time really thinking meaningfully about that. Do I want to spend the next 7 years, 2 more at West Point and then 5 more in the Army, to pay back for that in the Army? And I questioned it that summer, but I made the decision to stay, and then never looked back, quite honestly, after that. Yeah.
So you made that commitment. You did the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Anything? How did that 2 years compare to, say, the first 2 years?
It's very different. First 2 years are really tough because it's a huge change, right? Again, you're coming out of being successful for the last 4 years of your life. For example, I played on the varsity soccer team, varsity wrestling team, and I got to West Point and I tried out for the soccer team. And I could never make the varsity team. I didn't even make the JV team. And for some reason, that was new to me. Like, to realize that I was thinking, if I can't make the varsity team, I'm not going to play. I don't know who I was kidding. I mean, you've got thousands of kids there competing for spots from all over the country. And me from a very rural school in upstate New York thinking I'm going to make the team. No way. I mean, some of these kids were so good. So you learn some humility pretty quickly. Once you're grounded in that, I think it's still, at West Point, it's still a culture of, we're going to push you until you fail, so that you know what it's like to fail and that you make a decision to come back from that and go on to the next thing. So it's kind of, even in your third and fourth year, you're getting pushed. For example, I played intramural soccer for the first couple of years for the company team, which we played against other teams at West Point. And after 2 years, you've got to switch sports. So I played football. And as you know, we didn't have football in high school. So I played football with a bunch of kids who didn't make the West Point football team, but they had played in high school and they were a little bigger than me and full gear and everything. And man, I'll tell you, talk about humbling. The day after the games, I couldn't pick my head up off the pillow. Like my body hurt so much. I didn't understand the concept that I can be on the field, not involved in the play, and somebody can take me out completely. So I learned, again, another dose of humility, which was valuable, I guess.
Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're getting ready to graduate.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did
When
you do, by the way? Did they tell you how you ranked in your class?
Yeah, they tell you, back then it was different. Everything was based on your GPA.
Okay.
They do it very differently now, which I'm fully supportive of, in that it's a more balanced approach of athletic scores, military scores, and your academics. And for me, I was flourishing when it came to the physical activity. I mean, I was in the best shape of my life probably at the time, and the military activities as well. My GPA got me somewhere around above the mid mark of the class, but not in the top 25%. So again, for somebody coming out of being valedictorian in high school, I was in a whole different league. And the goal was really to get through. Like I didn't study to learn. I studied to get by, to get through the classes, to be able to graduate, to be able to get commissioned as an officer and serve. So it's a little different than the way, my kids have gone to college to actually learn something they're passionate about.
Hmm.
I was going with the purpose of, I think all of us there, it was, you got to get through these 4 years so you can move on with life.
Survival.
Yeah, that's what
I
it was.
mean, even if you had good intentions to learn everything,
Yeah, you're
I
still
mean,
surviving.
right. I mean, they're trying to make you quit.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that was the idea, was to very quickly separate those that this was not for them. So there were plenty of decision points where if this wasn't what you really wanted, you had plenty of ways to opt out, before you got out of there for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So as you're approaching graduation
yep,
at United States Military Academy,
yeah.
what choices do you have?
Yeah, you have choices of which branch you're going to serve in, and what assignment you're going to get. And all that was based on grade point average. So, are you going to join the infantry, the artillery? It was very difficult to get a spot in the engineer corps, for example. You had to have a pretty good GPA. Bottom of the class, guaranteed you're going to be in the infantry. And I was somewhere in between the two. And then there's a balance of your branch that you're serving in and the location. So I was really fortunate, I think, because I drew a pretty good balance of, I got a great assignment at Fort Ord with the 7th Infantry Division Light, which was one of two rapid deployment forces in the U.S. at the time, the 82nd Airborne Division on the East Coast and the 7th Infantry Division Light on the West Coast, both of whom had the mission of going anywhere in the world within 18 hours notice. That was the what we were called to do. So I got that assignment at Fort Ord, which meant that prior to going out there, I got to as many schools as I could with the Army. So I had been to jungle school down in Panama, Northern Warfare School in Alaska. I got a chance to go to Ranger School, which I had to compete for, but I really wanted to show up as a second lieutenant at my first assignment with a Ranger tab on the uniform and really distinguish myself from many others. That was important to me. It was another one of those, I'm going to prove I can do this. So at our basic course, there were 4 slots available for Ranger School, and I competed with, we had 76 of us in the basic class, and only 4 were going to get a slot to go to Ranger School. And I was able to get one of those opportunities. So I picked up Ranger School, Airborne School, Air Assault School, and then I showed up in the fall of 1988 at my first assignment at Fort Ord, California.
What was jungle school like? Let's go through them one by one.
Ooh, jungle school, I did not enjoy. It was down in Panama, and you step off of the aircraft, and immediately you had sweat on your skin, like right away. You were just sweating, and it was loud in the jungle. I mean, you have monkeys screeching at night. You had to handle snakes and all sorts of things. Just navigating the terrain, and then we did a lot of land navigation day and night. So jungle school was really a combination of can you navigate in terrain like that, learn how to survive in that type of terrain, and then work as a unit to fight against an oppositional force. Um, I didn't enjoy jungle school. I won't lie to you. I was the honor graduate of our class, which was great, um, but I did not enjoy those couple 3-4 weeks down there. Yeah, it was tough.
Did you think about quitting that?
No, no, no. I remember I remember being there in these very rough barracks that they had, mosquitoes everywhere and listening to monkeys and then spending so much time in the jungle thinking this is not going to last much longer. I mean, I really had between my faith that I established as a kid and everything wrestling had taught me about, which is, you can get through this. Um, it was never an option to quit. It was just, for me, the actually more important thing was, can I work with this group of people I'm with, this team, and can we get through this together? Um, and kind of like the other sports I had played, it was really about the team more than anything, even in jungle school.
I was just going to say, is that the way you were communicating with these guys? Like, we can get through this together. And then you had the foundation, or the dual foundation, of your faith in wrestling.
Yeah, my faith was huge, and for me, it was noticing that, I only learned at West Point the power that you give to somebody by making sure they understand you believe in them and that you're optimistic that they're going to get through this. And something was very transformational for me at West Point in realizing that a group of people who are down and out, cold, wet, hungry, miserable, if you get out in front of them and just say, hey, I believe in you guys, we got to get through this, we got 24 more hours, we're going to make it, follow me, they'll step up and do that. And then together, all of you can feel really good about that when you get where you're going. And I think each of those schools that I went to kind of taught me that in a different environment, if you will.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, what do you remember about Alaska?
Alaska, I love that. Now that I enjoyed, I have to say, we did a lot of rock climbing early on. Then we went up to a glacier. We pretty much lived on the glacier, and we were in a whiteout for a couple of days. I remember that well. Very difficult to move. We were roped up most of the time because you never knew where the crevices were that you could possibly slip into. But it was absolutely beautiful. And more than the training itself and the difficulty of it, I remember the moments of being out there and just enjoying Alaska in the summer on a glacier, just the beauty of the landscape more than anything. That's my most vivid memory of Northern Warfare School.
Have
Yeah.
you read the book Points Unknown?
I don't think I have. No.
Okay. I'll send it to you.
All right. Thank you. Cool.
You're welcome. It's all these adventure stories.
Okay.
Some Antarctica, some in the Arctic, some in the
Nice.
jungle. It's pretty crazy.
Nice.
What reminded me of it is John Krakauer is the author of one of the stories, and it's called The Devil's Thumb, and
Okay.
it takes place maybe not in Alaska, but it's pretty close. If it's not Alaska, maybe it's northern
Okay.
Washington or something.
Yeah.
But it's an island, and he climbs this vertical piece of granite, which is like 2,000 feet tall or something, and he gets stuck. And he can't go up and can't go down. And he talks about that feeling of not being able to go up and not being able to go down, and what he did and how he had to quiet his mind.
Yeah.
And I was listening to Alex Honnold recently too,
Hmm.
the free climber.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was talking about fear and what a problem it is on the rock for a lot of reasons. But he said just physiologically, when your heart rate goes up,
Yeah.
your vision narrows. He's like, then you can't see the good holds because your vision isn't as good.
Right.
Your body is in a retreat,
Yeah.
state. And he's like, you can't be effective. And I listened to that quote and I thought, that's true of everything in life. It's
Yeah.
like the minute you start to go negative, you can't go positive. you know.
Right. Yeah, very true. Very true. I mean, the power of mindset, and we talk about it about being at peak performance, and some of that is physical for sure to be at peak performance, but there's a very large mindset piece too. And you're right, when you don't have that outlook, um, physiological changes take place that make it more difficult to be successful at whatever it is that you're doing.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'll have to read that. Krakauer's written some really great stuff, so I look forward to that.
Yeah, I'll send it.
Cool.
So you did the various schools, jungle school,
Yeah.
then ranger school was after Alaska, or that was ranger school?
No, that was after. So Ranger School was after the officer basic course. I had already been to jungle school and Northern Warfare School.
Okay.
And then I picked up Ranger School. I picked up Ranger School and Airborne together at Fort Benning. And Ranger School was about 8 weeks, 4 phases. You had the first period of time at Fort Benning was really just a gut check, which was who can they get out of the program quickly just based on physical inability and mental inability. And then once you got through that, you had a mountain phase, a jungle phase, and a desert phase. And that together comprised Ranger School.
So back to the jungle?
Back to the jungle, not the one in Panama this time, but the jungle. The best thing that happened to me in the jungle was I met a guy named Mike Ross who he was already at Fort Ord, and he had gotten a spot at Ranger School, but he was already living out there and part of the 7th Infantry Division. And this is back, pre cell phone and all that. And he said, "Hey, when you get out there, just look me up, and I'll help you get settled." And sure enough, that's exactly what I did. When I got out there, probably 6 months later, by the time I got through everything else I had to get through. But yeah, Ranger School was it's very, very tough, right? I mean, you can read all about it. At the end of the day, yes, you learn how to fight in tactical environments. You learn hand-to-hand combat. You learn how to operate as a team against an oppositional force and win. There's a fair amount of weapons training. But the real thing you learn at Ranger School is what your body's able to do if your mind is strong enough to will it to do it.
Mm.
Because you don't eat much, you're often without enough hydration, you don't get a whole lot of sleep, and you're put in very stressful environments. And if your mind is strong enough to tell your body to keep going, you make it through. And if it's not, you do not make it through. But coming out of there, that's the biggest thing you learn. In the process, you lose 25 or 30% of your body weight. You get beat up pretty good, but there's nothing that feels as good as getting through that program successfully.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that must make all the marathons and other stuff that you've done seem easy.
I don't know about easy, but it does make them seem achievable. Yeah. And that's where, to your earlier point, each of those events, whether it's the adventure races, triathlons, marathons, those are really battles with yourself. I mean, a big part of those events is the camaraderie of who you're doing those events with and the people you're competing with and trying to be a part of their success as much as your own, but you're really competing against yourself. But certainly coming out of Ranger School, a program like that, you almost feel invincible when you get through something like that. Like you're ready to just take the world on. And for me, growing up the way I did, I didn't have a whole lot of confidence. I wasn't a very good wrestler. I wasn't the first pick of the team when anybody was picking sports teams. Yes, I got good grades, and even at West Point, right, I was kind of middle of the pack, just an average Joe, if you will. But getting through Ranger School to me was maybe another turning point for me that said, I've been able to do something that most cannot do. And I think it really did make a difference the way I showed up at my first assignment at Fort Ord.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So then what happened?
Well, I got to Fort Ord, and I guess I got there late in 88, early 89, I guess it was by the time I got through Ranger School, early 89. And I got assigned as a platoon leader. And, we did these things called EDRES all the time, emergency deployment readiness exercises. And really the mission was, they were just putting us through a drill to make sure that if called upon, we could get all of our equipment, draw our weapons, draw our ammunition, get up to Travis Air Force Base near Sacramento and be wheels up to go wherever the threat was within 18 hours. So we carried pagers. You had a period of time where you were on call and then you were off for a while. We spent a lot of time out in the field doing training exercises at Fort Hunter Liggett and Fort Irwin. But in May of '89, we had got an EDRI. We got an alert on our pagers, and we showed up. And at the gates, CNN was there, and all the news companies. And we thought this is a little bit different. And that's when we deployed down to Panama. If you recall, the whole incident with Noriega back in '89. So 7th ID was scrambled to go down there. And so that EDRI was the real thing, where we were actually, being issued live ammunition and sending folks down to Panama.
What do you remember about that?
The biggest thing I remember is, and this is another great lesson, right? There were about 5 of us lieutenants in our company, and we each had different platoons. But probably, one of the lieutenants who was the more gung ho, energetic, louder. That was a tough day. When we came out of a briefing and we knew that the landing zone was hot, meaning that the last aircraft that had landed there had taken fire from snipers in the tree line. And when you're briefing your team that, we're deploying and you can't say much about where, you don't know for how long. I saw leaders that were typically loud, leading out front, gung ho, and all of a sudden that changed. And that mask of, tough guy disappeared and fear took over. And that can have a very debilitating effect on a team if a leader's going through that. And for me, I wasn't that gung-ho, get behind me, follow me. I was more of a leader of, I really trusted my team and I was there for them. So I felt good about the fact that I could represent to the team and keep everybody very calm, give them enough information, but not too much information to where you're going to unnecessarily cause fear or doubt. But for me, the real lesson there was you've got to be authentic. And for me, authentic leadership was just being me and acknowledging what we were up against, staying calm, which I think is extremely important as a leader, and not manifesting anything I was feeling outwardly because of the effect it would have had on the team.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, you learn a lot in a crisis about people. Everybody reacts differently, and sometimes there's some really soft-spoken people that you underestimate, but they have a really strong internal compass, and they rise to the challenge in times of crisis. And others who you expect to be the natural leaders because they're a little bit louder and more outspoken. And sometimes they tend to be less effective in crisis situations, I find.
Like a little false bravado normally.
Yeah, a little false bravado, a little bit of emotion.
Then
Yeah,
you can't get away with it when the
no,
shit hits the fan.
exactly. There's no place to hide. There's no place to hide when that happens. So, yeah, so that was good learning as well. And I mean, my time at Fort Ord was, I mean, I loved it. I loved being in the Army. I think if the Army would have let me do line leadership for 20 years, I would have stayed. But there's a very defined career path. And, you go from leading a platoon to getting an executive officer spot and hopefully getting a company command. But then you're on staff jobs for, quite a number of years before you're eligible for a battalion command. And so for me, I could have scripted what the next 15 years would look like, which didn't seem attractive. So, after I had fulfilled my 5-year commitment, all of which I did at Fort Ord, I was fortunate to stay out there and not have to go anywhere else. I ended up leaving the Army in 1993.
And then what'd you do?
Well, there were some companies that were specializing in helping junior military officers like me find civilian jobs. And really they got to know us, and the choices they gave us was you can either go into operations or you can go into sales. And so we interviewed. They did a really nice job of prepping you for interviewing and bringing in a bunch of companies and letting you interview. And I made the choice. I wanted to stay in Northern California. All my friends were out there. All the activities I loved were out there. You could go scuba diving one weekend and snow skiing the next weekend in Tahoe. So I took a job with a medical device company. It wasn't the highest salary I was offered, quite honestly. And in all transparency, it was $33,000. That's what I was making a year coming out of the Army. Um, so I liked the company, though. I liked what they were doing. I liked the people I met. They really seemed to focus on talent and on developing leaders. And they offered me a role coming in as a distribution supervisor. So my first job working in a medical device space was leading a team of people, half of whom were at one end of the factory, bringing in components and inspecting them and sending them out to the production floor, and the other half were on the other end, packaging everything that was built and then shipping it.
How long did you do that for? Or what was that like, I should say? Did you like that job?
I liked it. It was I was the first guy in because my team had to get parts out to production, and I was the last guy out because we had to ship everything that was made that day. But it was a good sized team, 35 people, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a small group of us that were leading it, if you will, an inventory control analyst and a few different administrative roles. But I like the idea of it being a team. We had a lot of metrics that we introduced, that we set goals for, that we tried to achieve. And the beauty of it was a pivotal part of the business because everybody in production wanted you to get them their parts, their components. And then everybody out in the field waiting for the finished good wanted you to get it to them. So, I got to know a lot of people in the company very quickly because I was in the middle of the action on pretty much both ends of it. So I enjoyed the job very much. A lot of hours, a lot of hard work. Built a good team, and then transferred over to production and ran one of our manufacturing units. And I still had this intrigue in the back of my mind, though. Should I have gone sales and
Mm.
not operations? Because I'm making $33,000 a year. Most of our sales reps are making six figures. And I was really intrigued by that. And I had the good fortune of our division president at the time. He said, John, I'll put you in as sales trainer, and you can spend a year training the sales force. You'll know the products inside out. You can ride with the best sales reps and get exposed to it and see what you want to do. So I got to see it up close and personal. I rode with our best sales reps, and a year later, a territory came open in Florida. He said, Johnny, do you want that territory? And I thought, geez, I could make 100 grand, or I could stay here. And I said, you know what? Put me back in operations, give me a team. That's what I was meant to do. And I took a role as a production manager. And I never looked back after that. I had satisfied my need to know what should I be doing. And I knew that I was meant to be leading a group of people to accomplish things in an operations environment.
Mm.
Yeah. And then I spent, well, I'm still doing that today, right? Just on a different
Mm-hmm.
scale. But I guess I spent the next 35 years doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when did you meet Claudia?
I met Claudia in 2002. I moved to Europe in late 1999.
Mm-hmm.
We had bought a company. It came with some manufacturing sites in Europe. I was a single guy living in California, and I was offered the chance to move to Switzerland and be responsible for 3 manufacturing sites in Switzerland and Germany. So I took the opportunity, and I was almost 3 years into it when I met Claudia. And the reason I met her is because she used to work for the company, same company as me. She had left. She was in HR, human resources, and I was visiting suppliers with the plant manager. And he said, "Yeah, Claudia left. We lost her." And I said, "Geez, I thought you guys liked her in HR." "Yeah, we did, but she took another job with a different company." And I said to the plant manager, "Look, get me in touch with her, and I'll try to have a coffee with her or something, see if I can get her to come back. We'd love to have her on the team." So I got set up with lunch for her, and I was supposed to try to get her to come back to work for us. And halfway through lunch, I thought, I'm not even going to ask that question. I'm just going to see if we can pursue something here. So That's how I met her, and we got married about a year and a half later, I guess it was.
That's funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, how long was lunch?
It
Did it go like 2 hours or?
was probably a 2 hour lunch, yeah, which is not uncommon in Europe, right? So it wasn't, but we spent a lot of time talking and catching up, and right away started dating. Um, and we got, at the age we were at, we got, serious pretty quickly. That was 2002, and we got married in the spring of 2004.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you have 3 adult children?
Three adult children. Yes, they all qualify for that because they're all 18 and over. But I have three adult children, two that are still in school studying, and one that's already out of college and living and working down in New Jersey, goes into the city for work every day. My oldest daughter.
What does she do?
My oldest daughter works for a hedge fund company right now.
Hmm.
She previously did some time working in human resources, and then my middle, she's at University of Michigan, studying urban technology, and then my son is at Bentley University, studying sustainability sciences and finance. So they're all finding their way, navigating through studies and professions, and doing well.
So back to your former employer. Is there any reason we can't say the name, by the
We can
way?
say the name. Yeah,
Okay,
I was fortunate to
Stryker.
work for Stryker. It's a great company, and I had a great 26 years there. So yeah, there's no reason we can't talk about that.
So eventually you ended up in charge of global supply
Yes.
chain. Uh, what was your title? I forget.
Yeah, I was vice president of global supply, which was comprised of, we had 43 manufacturing sites around the world, give or take 14,000 people in those sites. So I had responsibility for, quality, production, everything that happens in manufacturing plants, and the procurement aspect and engineering aspect of producing that.
So I kind of thought at one point you might be there for the rest of your career, but what happened?
Yeah, I thought so too. I had a great run there. I mean, 26 years, and I went from, having a team in the warehouse to running one plant and then three plants. I got to live in Europe. I got to travel the world. I had 43 sites. And I was building a global team. My real mission in life, which it continues to be. Now I'm just doing the same thing at Convatec, right? I'm trying to get people in different cultures and different geographies that produce different products for the same company to find the commonality in their cultures, in their expertise, to share best practices. And I really believe that when teams can take the best of what everybody brings and have the humility to do it somebody else's way because you can see that it's better, and be the same where you're able to be the same, and respect the differences where you need to be different, you can unlock so much potential for an enterprise. So at Stryker, I was trying to do that with 43 sites and 14,000 people. And I mean, some of the leaders I had the chance to work with on my team, I feel really privileged to have worked with them. They've gone on to do tremendous things in different industries and different companies. What happened there, though, I had the opportunity, I guess it was 25 years in, and my boss said to me, John, I'm going to retire. And the question from the CEO is, do you want to interview for my job? Uh, and I thought about it. I said, no, I don't. Like, I really like my job. I like being responsible for the line. Like I said about the Army, I wanted to be a line leader. My boss spent a lot of time, as you need to at that level, managing the external environment, including the boardroom, investors. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to run the sites and build a global team. So I stayed in the role I was in, and somebody else came in to take my boss's job, and it became very clear very quickly that you didn't need both of us. And I was the one to go. And that was a turning point for me because I thought I would retire from there. I thought I'd stay and finish what I was trying to do. Um, and so I tried something different. I tried a couple different things. Did some consulting, ran a small company, which I thought I might have always wanted to do, run the whole company. Um, not didn't have to travel a whole lot, which everybody had said to me, "Aren't you tired of traveling so much? You know, you're all the time on the road." And what I learned pretty quickly, with the help of my family, who helped me realize that I was much happier in a global job with a fair amount of travel and a large team, is that that's what I was meant to do. So after a couple of years trying to find my way, um, I quit what I was doing, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. And then the opportunity at Convatec came along. I got a phone call that there was a global quality and operations role for a European company. I would have to move to Switzerland. My 16-year-old son didn't appreciate that too much. He had 2 years of high school left, but we decided to take the opportunity and pick up and move to Switzerland and do another global quality and operations role, which I'm thoroughly enjoying at the moment.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
So, do you feel challenged right now?
Yes, definitely. I feel challenged. I have a great team. I mean, I have a team of people. Like if you go back, I have people that worked for me at Stryker that I really believed in, that I did everything I could to help open up opportunities for them. They're CEOs at other companies. Like they've done more professionally on their CV, their resume, than I've done. And that makes me really happy. I've got a team of people now that's not dissimilar, like people that are so good at what they do. They're younger than me, and just have so much. They're smart, they're energetic, they want to work as a team. And we're delivering some really good results for the company now, but we've yet to really become a high performing team. And that's what we're trying to do. And we've got some very objective things we're trying to attain over the next couple of years, to demonstrate that we've achieved new heights as a global quality and operations team. So that challenges me every day. Every day I'm learning, I'm growing, and hopefully I'm adding some value and helping other people do the same.
My guess is yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, when you think about, um, you and I are 58 now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like, are you the kind of guy that thinks about retiring someday, or will you do something more or less forever?
I used to think about retiring. And I used to think that, when you got a certain amount of money in the bank that you knew was going to be enough that you could retire, you would retire. I think very differently now. Like the last 5 or 6 years in particular, I've really changed my thinking. I don't think I'll ever retire completely. I don't think I'll stay in an executive level job for a public company into my 70s. But I'm not done yet. I've got a lot left to give, a lot left to do, things to achieve, things to learn and do. I think retirement for me will be working still. It'll be doing something meaningful to add value for as long as I possibly can. And I think by continuing to stay challenged mentally, physically, intellectually, I think you extend your life. And you want to have a long life, but you want it to be at a high level of quality where you're physically and mentally able to participate. And I don't know that retirement is the way to achieve that. I'd rather stay plugged in and keep doing things to make a difference.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just, I feel like it wouldn't be, I wouldn't be able to do it. I don't think. The
Yeah.
idea of retiring to what? People ask me that a lot. Like, are you going to retire? And they say I hang around with people all day long that I want to hang around with,
Yeah.
and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And we have conversations like this. And
Yeah.
what would I be retiring to? And have you ever heard the T. Boone Pickens? I'm not sure I'll say it right, but he was being interviewed. I think it was on his 93rd birthday. And
Okay.
the interviewer said, Mr. Pickens, you're 93. Do you ever think about retiring? And he said, well, they tell me that you retire to stop doing what you don't want to do so that you can do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Pause. He says, I don't do anything I don't want to do.
That's great.
So, I mean, I don't know. Like, and the stuff that I used to think that I didn't want to do, the
Yeah.
hard stuff,
Yeah.
is what I really want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's such a paradox,
Yeah. Why not keep
Sisyphus is my man.
Sisyphus? Yes. Yes. Pushing that up the hill to continue to persevere, resilience.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. And that's where I had the good fortune of going down to Bell Leadership in North Carolina, Dr. Jerry Bell. And he is an incredible human being who was a professor at Keenan Flagler Business School, but then started his consulting business. But for 30 years he's been telling me, and so many other people he puts through the programs, you don't want to retire. You want to stay active. You want to stay plugged in. You want to keep learning and growing, and that's exactly what he's doing. And he's probably a good 15 years older than you and I,
Hmm.
and still going strong and contributing every day. And to your point, I love what I do. I choose to do it. I still give high quality time with my family, with my wife, with my kids, with my extended family. I still do the activities I want to do, hiking and skiing. So yeah, why retire if you're having fun doing what you're doing, and it's where you can make a contribution? Why not keep doing it?
So do you still go to the Bell leadership programs, or do you stay in touch with him, or?
Yeah, I go back once a year. We do Dr. Bell does a roundtable reunion. So anybody who's been through the Bell Leadership Roundtable program, they invite us back for a day, and it's a little bit of a refresher. You always see some common faces of folks that you've been to some of the classes with down there, and then it's just some of the newest thinking from Dr. Bell and his colleagues on leadership, and how, as the external environment evolves, they're just helping us keep our game at the top notch, I guess, for leadership. So I try to stay very plugged in there. Um, that was a pivotal part of my leadership development, because coming out of the Army, leading at Stryker when I first got there, it was, hey, get behind me, let's go, we're going to do this. And I got to Bell Leadership, they did a 360 survey on me. And the 360 survey, I think Dr. Bell sat me down and said, John, your people love you. It's a great thing. Like, they would follow you to the edge of the cliff and they would jump off with you. They would have no idea why. And that's a problem. So
Mm.
you've got to spend a little more time developing meaningful relationships, working on your communication skills, and understanding that not everybody is driven the same way. So it really helped me to tone down some of the military leadership style, which was so effective in the Army, and adapt a little bit of more of a collaborative, consensus building, communicative style that probably enabled me to have global operations roles, because it certainly opened me up to respecting the differences in cultures, and finding the value in people of all sorts, not just from one particular mindset and approach. So Bell leadership has been really important to me in my career. Yeah.
How do you do it? Do you say, I want to have a cup of coffee with you, or go to lunch, or?
I have a lot of conversations with people. And for me, what that's looked like for the past 30 years is, when I go to manufacturing sites, I spend time with the leadership team. We do a business review. We always have a meal together. We get some quality time talking about things that aren't work, talking about families. I want to know about people's family, and how they got to where they got, and what do they want to do next, how are they doing, and the other things they do in life. Like, that's important to me. So it could be just walking the shop floor, talking to the people on the machines, straying off the path that the plant manager wants you to be on, where you see what they want you to see. I'm the guy that kind of goes off the path and talks to whoever I want to, and gets to know them. And then I go back a year later and I still know their name. And
Mm.
when they realize that this guy, who's a global guy with 6, 8, 10,000 people, he knows who I am, and he remembers I have two kids. I think that means a lot to people. So I try to operate that way. I learned a long time ago from, I guess, the Gallup organization. It's one of their fundamental beliefs about engagement is, the fundamental principle is, can people say, my supervisor cares more about me as a person than he or she cares about the work I do today? And if everybody in your workforce feels that way, that their leader is is more concerned about them as a person, they bring that to work every day, and you get great business results, and you get people that are living high quality lives. So for me, I really love the relationship part of it, getting to know my team, whether it's a meal or a cup of coffee or just a one-on-one like you and I are having right now and having a conversation and listening to what they're all about and learning. Um, that's a big part of what I do. And it's a big part of why I like what I do is because it's all about people. Yes, we're delivering really good business results, but we're doing it because we're respectful of people. We let them do the things they do best, and we help them develop to do things they didn't think they could do and achieve new heights. So that's the fun part of it.
It's that's great because the congruency, in my view,
Yeah.
it's all pulling. You're all pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
And of course, paradoxically, when you care more about the human being than you do about the money, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
you end up getting more money.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because everyone
Exactly.
becomes more productive.
Right.
Everyone wants to pull in the same direction. And
Yeah. And I think too, you make mistakes. So I made mistakes in my past where I chose work over a different role in life I was playing. And I think you start to realize that that's a mistake. And so I try to help other people not make that mistake, to make sure leaders know, hey, it's okay to take some time off. It's okay to leave early and attend an event with one of your kids. You don't want to miss those life events for work. Work's going to be there tomorrow, and I can cover for you while you're out, or somebody else can cover. So trying to help make people make the right decisions to have a high quality life, that's more important than the business results you attain. And I think the proof of that is you and I could sit for hours and I could tell you the names of thousands of people that I've worked with in different places around the world. I have no idea what we achieved together for business. I couldn't tell you what the numbers were or the percent improvement in profitability, but I could tell you their names and probably what they're doing and things about their family. And I guess having that robust network of people and knowing that you've been a part of so many people's lives, I think that's a lot more gratifying than the plaque on the wall that says the numerical achievement you attained.
amen.
Yeah.
So, is there anything you might like to ask me? Is there anything we're leaving out? Anything we should be talking about that we haven't talked about?
I mean, Pat, you're one of the most driven, successful guys I know. And I learn from you every time we sit and talk together, as I've shared with you. So I greatly appreciate the relationship. But
Likewise.
if I could ask you a question, to be, what drives you, and what is it that you're trying to achieve? Like, what are those things on the horizon that you're still going after?
Hmm. It's not a number. It's not I used to think I wanted to be number one, whatever number one means. And I decided eventually that number one is a different thing to everybody.
Yeah.
It could be a number, it could be some production goal, it could be money saved in a bank. Um, but that's for me, I'm doing in a decentralized way what you're doing. So I have 30 professional colleagues that I am helping them build their businesses. And I have 17,000 people in my database, and I can't possibly manage that.
Right.
And I maybe can manage 500 to 1,000, but I know 6 or 7,000 of the people reasonably well, and they're all successful executives or business owners. So I've tried to tell every one of the 30 the way in which I operate. And as you may recall, I studied in Mexico and Spain and Barbados, and in each case, I had to interview folks in other countries who did not want to be interviewed by me. I was a white kid from a private school in America,
Yeah.
and these people thought I was from the government, or they had no idea what I was doing there, and they just lack of trust. And the funny thing is, it's not unlike what I do now. I approach a person who's really doesn't know me. Someone else may have said something nice about me to them.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's just, here's a phone number. This person's a friend of mine, give them a call. And then I go and meet with them. And it's a lot like the cultural anthropology trips I had in those other countries, because
Yeah.
I'm dealing with a person who's reluctant to speak to me. They, generally speaking, they haven't checked my references, even if I gave them to them. They're busy. And
Yeah.
so I'm starting cold in a meeting, and I try to establish commonality, just like you're doing with your teams. And so for me, I want to teach the other, and a lot of these people already know how to do this, and a lot of them do it better than I do, which is the goal, right? You want people to be better than you.
Right.
But what I'm having the most fun doing right now is going to these trade association gatherings. Like a couple of weeks ago, I went to something called the Workboat Show, which was recommended by someone, and
Yeah.
it was 1,000 um, exhibitors in the New Orleans Civic Center and
Okay.
14,000 attendees. So everybody at that show was either directly or indirectly attached to working boats, whether it's tugboats or ocean liners or
Yeah.
barges
Yeah.
or riverboat captains or facility managers or you name it,
Yeah.
stevedores. It could be transportation coming into a port. It could be on like trucking.
Yeah.
There's transportation, distribution. There's manufacturers that want proximity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just endless. And I was there basically as a cultural anthropologist. And when people ask, what are you doing here? That's kind of how I explain it. I say, well, that was my background in college. The way that I get business is I meet new people in different cultures. And the workboat crowd is nothing more than a big tribe.
Mhm.
And it's a pretty diverse tribe, but it's a tribe nonetheless. And they all have this kind of vernacular. They speak, and I try to learn the vernacular and get to know the people. And really, what I want to do is get to know the chiefs, because if you get to know the chiefs in the tribe, then you can more easily meet everyone.
Right.
And so little by little, I befriend people. And then I'm trying to teach these other 30 people by bringing them with me. I'm like,
Yeah.
we're going to go on an expedition, and we're going to New Orleans, and you're not going to know one single person at this show. This is only going to be my second time going. So maybe I'll know a couple dozen people. And so I met this, just by way of example, I
Yeah.
met this one guy, and his father worked at GM. And he was like one of your people would be on the production floor. He
Okay.
was a teams guy. He had 18 people on his teams. And through thick and thin, over 50 years, this guy never got laid off at GM. He and his team, no matter how bad the car business got,
Yeah.
he was at the forefront of robotics. And this guy's like 55, 60.
Okay.
The son is telling me the story about his father.
Yeah.
And I'm listening, just in rapt attention
Yeah.
to this guy talk about his dad. And I said, tell me about you. And he basically is a carbon copy of his dad, but he builds propulsion systems for big workboats.
Okay.
And he's a brilliant machinist, and he knows all this stuff. And
Yeah.
I explained what I'm trying to do. I said, well, I'm trying to, get a toehold in your industry. Would it be okay if I follow up with you at some point? And he says, sure, yeah, whatever you need. And so I've had a couple conversations with him now. I'm going to go to St. Louis and see him at some point. And he's just like this brilliant genius and a
Yeah.
fascinating guy. And I want to have him on this podcast, by the way. And, but to me, that's so much fun to like
Yeah.
meet a guy like that. He's enthusiastic about what I'm enthusiastic about for no reason. Like he has nothing to gain by helping me,
Right.
but he's like, sure, I'll show you the lay of the land. I'll connect you with
Great.
people you need to be connected with.
Yeah.
And then for me to pass that on to those other 30 people that I'm working with, and I'm doing it in all different industries. So like I may end up with 30 different industries. I say manufacturing, distribution, transportation, shipping, heavy construction, mining, and on and on and on. Who knows what I'll think of next? But I tend to like capital intensive industries like yours, manufacturing,
Yeah.
people that actually make something and that product has utility somewhere.
Right.
So to me, like I just keep peeling the onion, and the onion is expanding. The onion is not getting smaller. This
That's
onion
good.
is just growing. And the more I learn, the more childlike I feel, just with excitement about what the next step could bring.
Yeah.
And I know a guy like Henry Kissinger is controversial. A lot of people hate him, but a lot of people love him, whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing that he did really well was he put people together that could help one another.
Yeah.
Maybe for causes people disagree with, but if one party needed another party, he would put them together. And indirectly that benefited him incredibly because he became fabulously powerful and wealthy. And I'm this is not a political statement at all. I'm just saying that function
Yeah.
of putting people together that can help one another gives me more joy than almost anything. And
Yeah.
and it's so much fun, and I do it in wrestling, I do it here, wherever I can put two people together. And I feel like
Yeah.
you must be doing that. That's how you're
Yeah.
getting these synergies, as you
Yeah.
put these teams together that and get them to lower that veil, that
Yeah.
protective veil, and then they can help one another. That cross, I don't know if it's cross pollination or what it is, but
Yeah.
it makes everybody better.
It does.
And
Yeah.
that's what gives me a charge, as you can see.
Yeah. It's very evident, and you should never retire. Like, yeah, if that's what you do and that gives you the energy that you just displayed, man, you got to stay with it because I mean, it's the only way. I think that elusive combination of success and happiness is about finding what it is that gives you that energy and then just sticking with it. And the world will say, why don't you retire? Why don't you stop? You're doing too much. That's wrong. Like, it's
Right. From
energizing.
what? Retire from joy?
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't make sense. That's great. I appreciate it. It's good to see that. Good to see you light up with that. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And really what it is, if I'm being, you know, if I could analyze it, I think it's of service to my fellow human being. When I'm inner directed and worried about my own needs,
Yeah.
I'm on the wrong path.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
I'm other directed and I'm worried about how can I help my fellow human being, whoever that is,
Right.
with whatever it is,
Yeah.
I'm absolutely in the right spot. That's what gives me
Yeah.
happiness.
That's great. But I think the enabler for that is the comfort with your own self. Like,
Mm.
you know from wrestling and everything you've done, you're going to be okay. So now you have something to give that will benefit other people, and how can you continue to do that and add value and make a difference? And it really is. It's all about the people side of it, and that's what you're talking about. You're talking about the people and the relationships, and ultimately that leads to business success. Yes, but it's the people part that's really the fun part, the energizing part, and the thing that makes a difference in the future.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And we're at the age now where we've got thousands of contacts. And
Yeah.
all these kids are our kids' age, are coming out of college, and they have no idea about anything. They don't know where to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And neither did I. You were way more sort of focused and on a track than I was. And I would say that most people are. But
Yeah.
we're in a position, like, to me, there's so much disintermediation, for lack of a better word, in the employment sector.
Yeah.
Like, you have AI trying to decide whose resume is going to go
Yeah.
get a second set of eyes.
Yeah.
And then you have all this talent. Like, I failed every personality test I ever took, and someone took a chance on me because they had 3 or 4 meetings with me in a row. And I was, I'm a very defective human being, but I'm okay with it,
Don't we
and
all,
that,
right?
right. But
Yeah.
this guy said to me, you failed the personality test 3 times, but I'm going to give you a shot. I don't care.
Yeah.
And like you said to your people,
Yeah.
I believe in you anyway. I think you're going to do it. There must be something wrong with the personality test. He made a joke out of it. And of course, that made me feel like he cared about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you could be cynical and say, oh, yeah, he just did that because you were another widget. And maybe that's true. I don't know, but it worked.
It worked.
And the combination of, I call it love. Yes, there's commerce involved. There's money involved in your field and my field and every field.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I have bad intentions or you have bad intentions.
Right.
I feel like we're better together.
Yeah.
I pick on consultants sometimes,
Yeah.
because consultants come in and they say, we're fee for service and we are totally objective in whatever it is we do and blah, 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 blah. But they're not. They're subjectively involved in making the projects last as long as humanly possible. And
Right.
that's just, human nature. There's nothing wrong with that. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean a consultant is bad. It just
Right.
means that they're not objective. And
Yeah.
in the same way, I say someone who works on contingency and whatever the field may be, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you get a bad service or bad value from them.
Right.
If I'm
Right.
in heavy construction and I'm bidding work, um, but I have a private client, so it's not like a public bid. It doesn't have to be the lowest bid.
Yeah.
So does that mean because I'm subjectively involved that I'm not going to give you a good product in the end? Not necessarily. If I want an ongoing relationship that's win-win over time,
Right.
and that's the way the best relationships end up being,
Exactly.
And of
Yeah.
course, the worst thing you could do to an honest man is say, use your better judgment and just do what you would do for me, for you. And then the person's like, oh, geez, now the pressure's on.
Yeah. Now what? No,
But
you're absolutely right. And I think another thing you said, which is so important, is at some point somebody took a bet on you. Like somebody said, I
mm-hmm,
believe in you. And for the multiple people that did that for me, how do you repay that? I think you repay it by doing the exact same thing for other people and seeing something in someone that they don't see in themselves and then placing a bet on that and giving them the opportunity and then supporting them. You can change somebody's life that way. It's
amen.
so powerful.
And the germ of the faith,
Hmm.
it's so fragile.
Yeah.
I heard this speech one time about what the orator called precursive faith.
Okay.
And that's belief in something even though you can't prove it. Like you could argue belief in God is precursive faith.
Yeah.
Like I could argue you had precursive faith going into West Point. Like maybe you were 100% certain you would make it through, but maybe there was a kernel of doubt. Like maybe I'm not tough enough. I'm pretty tough. I think I'm tough. It can't be harder than wrestling. But
Yeah.
a lot of people, and I'm one of them,
Yeah.
like just don't have the confidence. So what works for me is to plant this germ in my own brain and then break it down into little tiny pieces,
Yeah.
like the smallest amount, so I can achieve something today. And eventually, of course, you can move mountains if you're willing to do that every single day. But there's a lot of people in the world who look at someone like yourself or someone like me,
Yeah.
and they say, I could never get there. I'm so far from that. And of course, we have to teach them, like,
Yeah.
this is how you plant the germ. And by the way, I can't imagine anybody I'd rather put my money on than you, is what I'm saying to this person.
Yeah.
You are a superstar. You just can't see it. And I often say, I heard this, I think Herb Cohen said it, the negotiator. He said, it takes two to see one. I can see you and you can see me, but I can't see me and you can't see you. So there's so much subjectivity involved in our lives. And
Yeah.
the tendency for most of us is to look inward and say, I can't do it. I'm no good. These are the reasons why I can't do it. I'm a failure.
Right.
I think we
Right.
hear the voice in our head say all these things that are negative. But if we have someone outside us to say, you can't see you, I can see you're going to be great no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And then people, like, there's just this 5-year-old child inside us that got hurt when we were little sometime.
Yeah.
Someone
Yeah.
told us we were stupid or ugly or we couldn't do it or
Yeah.
weak or all those things. And
Yeah.
those things could all be true, but it still doesn't mean that you can't be great.
Right. Right.
And that's the other thing. People think they need to be perfect. And I just want them to know, like, there's so much imperfection in the world.
Yeah.
It's all just what
Yeah.
prism you're looking through,
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's imperfect or perfect, depending how you could say they're perfectly imperfect.
Yeah, depending
It's
on the lens you look
paradox.
at it through. Yeah, very
Amen.
true. Yeah, but that's the thing, and that's where I think people can look at what we've been able to do. I mean, if you were go back to my childhood,
Amen.
I wasn't very athletic. I missed more than half of the days of kindergarten because I was sick with allergies. Like I had no reason to be successful and happy, but I am both, right? In
Amen.
the eyes of the world. And so if we can do that, yeah, how can you help other people understand that you can do this? Like you feel so bad for people that put themselves in a box and say, I can't. I don't believe in I can't. I believe in I can. And let's find a way to do it.
Yeah.
And if you can unlock that for people, it changes the world one person at a time. But it makes a huge, huge difference just by believing in somebody.
Agreed. And so to answer your question in a 15-minute ramble, that's what makes me happy. If I'm in service to my fellow human beings,
Yeah.
like, and all these kids coming out of college, I was just thinking about this one young guy I know, and
Yeah.
He's looking for a job in finance. He thinks he doesn't even know what finance is. I don't know what finance is. What is it?
Right.
What is he going to do? Go work for a bank or a mutual fund or a private equity or a hedge fund or who knows? But I feel like, and I'm doing this over the phone with him. And I just as we're talking, I'm thinking to myself about you on the shop floor. And I have to get a one-on-one with this kid, because that's the only way the magic happens. I got to get a one-on-one with him,
Yeah.
face to face,
Yeah.
because he doesn't know what he wants, and he's afraid,
Yeah.
and doing 100 different, he's writing letters to 100 different companies. And,
Yeah.
all it's going to take is a couple phone calls and I can get him in a position where,
Yeah.
and then he'll go from there. But,
Right. You can get him to start. I mean, you can make a
right.
connection for him. You can listen to him to understand what he really wants to do, and then make a meaningful connection for him. And after that, it's on him, right? And he can run with that, which is great.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But I see greatness in him.
Yeah.
So, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I'm in the habit of talking about the hyphen. Do you remember what the hyphen signifies?
I remember
Oh, good.
yeah. You taught me that.
Okay. So
Yeah.
your date of birth and your date of death, the
Yeah.
hyphen is between those two. And that's why it's so significant
Yeah.
as a form of punctuation. If I didn't know anything about you, what would you want me to know about you if you were to summarize your life?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, what I would want you to know, what I want to know myself is I've lived a good life and I've made a difference. And that could be for Claudia, my wife. It could be for the three kids. It could be the extended family. It could be all the business people I've met over the years and community members and kids that I've coached and everything. So, did I live a good life? Did I make a difference? And I think for the hyphen, it's not so much what did I do? I think what would be important to me is what do people say when they're looking at the hyphen? What I want them to say is he was a great guy. He believed in me. He helped me believe in myself. He made a difference for me. I'm better because I knew him. And if people can say that after I'm gone, I couldn't ask for more, quite honestly. As long as in that circle of people is my friends, my family, and the many, many folks I've had the privilege of working with over the years. That would be powerful, because then the real impact of that is they go out and do the same thing, and that ripple effect takes place. And you think about, I impact one life, and then that person impacts how many others, and it just cascades. So that's what I would want the hyphen to be about for me. Yeah.
Me too. This isn't about me, but I'm going to tell another story. This
Go
guy
for
Al,
it.
this guy Al Granum, is quite well known.
Yeah.
He developed this system for record keeping among salespeople, and he used to say, "People either bring you up or bring you down in life. There is no in between. Nobody leaves you neutral.
Mhm.
Spend your time with people that bring you up."
Yeah.
And I was like, I struggle with that sometimes. I want to please people that cannot be pleased.
Yeah.
But like, I want to be that person for other people too.
Yeah.
It's the way that you said.
That's great. I mean, when you do that, you're investing your time. When you're with those people, you're investing your time in them. And if
Mm-hmm.
you make the mistake of going to the other crowd, you're spending your time. And it's
Mm.
just that. It's am I investing my time or am I spending it? And I want to invest my time in other people and help them to be better, to be successful, and to be happy. Live a high quality of life for as long as possible. And if we can say we've done that for other people, um, then I think we've lived a good life.
It just makes everything better. Then every
Yeah.
time you see people, they're happy to see you, and
Yeah.
just a circle of bringing people up,
Yeah.
and
You wouldn't you
vice
wouldn't want
versa.
you wouldn't want it any other way.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time, brother. This was great.
Absolutely. Great talking to you as always. And again, I always learn when I'm with you, and I appreciate the chance to share some thoughts with you. So thanks for having me on.
You got it.
All right. Stay
Take
well, Pat.
care.
Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye. If you enjoy the most fascinating podcast in the world, please follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Apple Podcast.